Okay. So yes, Mark started in 2005. He's a real estate investor. He owns rental properties, and then from there he completed over 70 real estate transactions, and now focusing 100% on lending. So if you have money problem, that's the man. And he is in business with his beautiful wife Inga, and they love to travel and showing kids the world, which we have the same hobby of traveling around the world. Hang on for a minute, I'm admitting Gio. Hey, Mr. Tyson, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Joel. How are you?
Good, good.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
All right, Mark. Good to see you, sir.
Been a while.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
So Jeff, I'm introducing Mark because he's our awesome speaker for tonight.
Yes.
And before you talk, Mark, let me show a little clip here.
Sure.
All right, and I will share this to everybody. Let's see. If it works. Okay. All right.
Oh, hello, boys and girls. Tony Award for the next level. I want you to improve. I want you to get better. I want you to be the very, very best. So now it's time to get busy. Just call 1-800. Giddy up. Here we go. You're getting chills.
Wow.
Hey, man. Thanks for the sweatbands. Welcome. Get it here. We made a decision to get it today. Making a decision is step 0. Taking action is step 1.
I hope you like that.
That was awesome.
That was.
So in real estate business, making a decision is step 0, but taking action is the key. And this is the reason why I asked Mark to talk to us. So if we have some inclination of wanting to be a real estate investor, and we needed something to keep it moving and make that action to reality, and knowing the ins and outs of the deal analysis is the key for us to be successful in our business. With that said, Mark, it's all yours.
Thank you. So, how many of you have ever borrowed money? Mortgages, loans, credit cards? Very good. How many of you have ever lent money? No? Have a friend ask you to borrow $5? Hopefully paid it back?
No.
Well, congratulate yourselves for being here. Because by nature of who you are, you guys already belong to the group of people who sees the opportunity to learn new skills and techniques. And that's what this talk is going to be about. A new perspective which will immediately help you in your business and beyond. So we're going to talk about the analysis, which is the math, putting numbers to the story. We'll talk about financing options and sources, and we'll talk about structure, right? How loans work and best practices. Useful?
Yes.
Good. So I'm Mark, the lender, Abramovich, And for 18 years, my job was to come up with new ideas the world had never seen, okay? What I did was I designed digital dental equipment, and specifically when you go to the dentist and they take x-rays of your teeth, instead of using film, they use digital sensors now. I use that equipment. The last count, I think it was 6 million people around the world daily that used our equipment. And I was the senior industrial designer, and I actually have 7 patents to my name for the work that I did. And it is this perspective that I've brought to the thousands of projects I have analyzed so far. I started investing, as Joel mentioned, in vacation rental properties and currently own multifamily buildings as well as a property management company. Now I'm smart enough to actually let somebody else manage that. My journey took me to lending, which I love passionately, right? The math, the numbers, the analysis. So for those of you that are not familiar with it, right, if you've ever watched HGTV, right, they do a flip, everything is wonderful. I'm the guy they never show, right, where the money comes from. So I'm not as sexy, apparently. So in lending, I initially made a number of mistakes. And, you know, they taught me a lot of valuable lessons, some of them very painful ones, and including the lesson that taking such losses monetarily and more importantly, time losses was just unsustainable. Not to mention it was kind of embarrassing, right? Me, Mr. 18 years of experience, patents, and I'm taking a beating. So what I did was I threw myself into analyzing the mistakes I made, right? Understanding what I did wrong. I got into, you know, I went to classes to study about lending, borrowing, learning best practices and how to finance projects. Basically, that's what my focus has been. And as a result, I developed some tools and techniques which help us at Mears Group and as well as our clientele achieve better and safer results. And that's what today is about. So the most important thing is the analysis. Okay, that is the most vital thing you're going to do. You tell the story, and then you fill in the specific, unique details and ask the uncomfortable questions, okay? The simple story in our industry, right, real estate, is, especially with a fix and flip, is you're buying, you're fixing, you're selling. That's it. And hopefully there's a positive profit at the end. Now, some of the questions that come with this are your experience, right? Whether you're experienced or a novice, are you going to partner with someone? Are you going to sell the property yourself, or are you going to use an agent? Those are the specifics already. But the main story is buy, fix, sell, profit. The expenses that you have to, so with these components, there are some expenses that you have to consider, right? And you have to consider all of them. You should look at what's the purchase price, what's the closing cost, what's the renovation cost, how long are you going to hold? The next question is, how do you calculate holding time, for example, right? Just to throw some numbers at you, a way that I suggest for people to calculate holding time is $5,000 per week. So whatever your renovation budget is, you budget about $5,000 per week, right? So it's a week per $5,000. And then you tack on about 3 months total between finding a buyer and closing on a mortgage. An important point is, don't forget to calculate your interest based on holding time, including the sale. Because oftentimes people will come to me, they'll mention, oh, you know, I'm going to get the project done in 2 months, you know, 2, 3, 4 months. Great. What about selling it? Oh, okay. Forgot that. So then consider, you know, for all of your expenses, you know, you've got your utility costs, right? So let's talk about utilities. If you've got workers in the property and they're using power tools, that's electricity. Are they using a generator, or are you connecting to the power grid? If they've got, you know, if they're working during the winter, then are you heating the place? Yeah, I understand you don't have to. They can work in gloves and hats, but, you know, happy workers, better quality. So, so if you warm, you know, so if you've got to heat the place, that's gas. If, on the other hand, it's summer in Florida or Arizona like it was this year, then probably you're using fans and electricity and air conditioning. So again, you have to account for the extra electricity. Same thing with bathrooms and washing hands, right? You need a water. You're going to have water bills. You need to have that hooked up. So other holding costs that some people don't account for are, for example, lawn care, homeowner association fees. And then, of course, the specific question you have to ask at the end is, as I mentioned, how are you selling it? Are you selling it for sale by owners, meaning yourself? Are you the seller? Or are you using an agent and are you paying them a commission? So once you have all of the expenses, you now have the other column, which is the income, right? So far, what we're doing is we're telling the story. You're telling the story of all of your expenses, all of your income. Now, when you're done with that is when we get to doing the math. Now, we're going to be talking about really simple math, okay? And all math is putting numbers to the story. That's all you're doing. Okay, so you take all of those expenses that you've listed out, now you just put numbers to them, okay? What do I mean? So let's just use an example, landscaping. And this was on a project that I actually did. I didn't anticipate it, but we ended up having to do landscaping on that project. And when we ended up doing landscaping, right? So it was a bill. I had to pay the gentleman every month, right? It was once a month that he needed to show up. So let's look at it. The generic story you're telling is you need to do landscaping. And let's say it's once a month. The specific is that your project is running, let's say 5 months. So that's 5 visits that gentleman's gonna make. And then the math you're doing for it is, let's say it's $40 per visit. It's going to be $40 per month times 5 visits, that's $200. So you take the general story, right? The common story of I need a landscaping, down to the specific of your project. Okay, I'm doing it for 5 months, and then do the math for it. So you account for all of your expenses, you account for, you calculate what your income is, and then you calculate the profit and the ROI. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The profit needs to make sense. It needs to be something that gets you out of bed to do it in the first place, right? You're not getting up and working on a project for a year just to earn $5,000. It's not happening. It's not worth your time. It's not even motivating you to do it. But on the other hand, right, so you need at least a minimum profit that makes sense for you. Then there's the return on investment. And return on investment, there's a return on investment of money and a return on investment of time. And again, that's even more important, right? Is $5,000 good as a return on investment of a day of your time? Yeah, I think so. But then on the other hand, for a year, not so much. On the other hand, what about $100,000 return on investment for a year's worth of time? Now we're talking. So you do the math and you figure out the profit and the return on investment. My personal calculations when I'm looking at projects, I think the minimum on a project should be, and this is market specific, but it should at least be $30,000 of profit, 10% ROI on the project. That's bare minimum. Now I understand in some markets it's a little bit different. In California and New York City, 5 to 10% ROI is acceptable because the dollar figures are just so much bigger. And I also understand that in a place like Columbus, Ohio, $30,000 might be a stretch also for profit. They might be dealing with $15,000 to $20,000. So you have to adjust it. But just as a rough metric to start with, 30,000, 10% ROI. So what we do as a lending company, when we look at deals, is we first look at the deal through the eyes of the borrower. Okay, we're first analyzing the deal. Is the deal a good deal in and of itself? And this is where my suggestion is you do the analysis always in cash. So we're going to discuss other financing options, but do the analysis as cash. And this is something actually I brought over from my buy and holds and the rental world, because that's how I'm able to compare property to property. I do it as a cash purchase, and then I put financing on it because financing for all of us is going to be unique. So first you analyze the deal as cash. So now that we've done this, now let's move on to what the financing options are, right? Which is sources of capital and how they affect the outcome. So what are the financing options? How do you finance a project? Your main options are cash, a loan, and an equity partnership. That's essentially the 3 ways of financing a project, and then you mix those options together. So cash is pretty much just that. You literally have a lump sum of cash sitting in your bank account. That's it. It's yours, you've got it. Now, if you're going to do an analysis and you're going to pay with cash, remember that if you're using a home equity line of credit, it has an interest charge on it. Okay, it might be minimal, right? Mine right now is about 3%. But nonetheless, if you're using that, you should still account for it in your calculation. You're still paying out 3%, so you should account for it when you're doing the numbers on your deal. The next option is loans. So loans can come from what's known as private sources or hard money. Although realistically, everything is hard, right? The term hard money comes from being backed by a hard asset. That's where the term hard money comes from. But what you also have is you have what's known as private people. These are your friends, family, acquaintances who know, like, and trust you. Okay, that's what makes them private. They're not available to everybody else. And I laugh and I tell the story, right? My dad is one of my private lenders, right? But if somebody was to pick up the phone and call him up and say, hello, Mr. Abramovich, would you lend to me on a project? He would say, who are you? Right? He's my private lender. He's my private resource. Now, what's known as hard is then you've got, the professional lenders. That includes myself, right? So people who are in the business of lending, companies who are in the business of lending, banks, right? So these are professional lenders and commercial institutions, and they've got their rates and fees and setup that, they're in this business. And then finally, there's the equity partnership. So this is where somebody will partner with you instead of lending to you, but they'll actually be your partner on the deal, and you'll somehow make an arrangement for how you're splitting the money afterwards. So, whether you're accruing interest and paying it out at the end, or whether they're actually receiving a piece of the profits. So the question when you're considering these combinations, and you can combine all of these together into, a way to finance a deal. Meaning you could go to a company to do a hard money loan for the bulk of the money. You can partner with a family member to get the remainder of the money, and then you bring in some of your own cash. So that's an example of a mix. So then the question becomes, how is the financing structured, right? And as a specific example, are you paying monthly interest, or is the interest accruing till the end? As an example, right? Is it interest on the entire loan amount, including the renovation costs, right, until you draw them? Or is it what you've drawn so far, right? So an explanation of that. So let's say the purchase is 100,000, renovation is 50. So what some companies will do, and we offer this, is let's say we provide the 100,000 towards purchase, but the 50,000 towards renovation is sitting in an account waiting until you're done, until you're ready for it, right? So you reimburse for work. Well, we're not charging interest on that 50,000 until it's needed or until it's used. On the other hand, if a smaller or different companies have different setups, if once they've made that loan for that 150,000, they're charging interest on the entire amount, even if you haven't used it yet. Why? Because they've locked it up. They've still locked it up, right? That money is still out of their circulation. So now, they need to charge interest on it. So it just depends. And these are the, questions of how it's structured. Then financing has an upfront, has costs, whatever your financing is, right? So you've got your upfront, you've got your during, and then you've got at the end. What do I mean by that? So professional lenders and lending companies, right? Loans have what's known as points in the beginning. What are points? It's the fee for doing the work upfront. So I've got, this is my business, right? So I've got overhead between electricity, internet connection. I've got staff that I have to pay. So upfront, we're doing work and we're charging fees, a fee known as points for this. And typically, so 1 point is 1% of the loan amount, right? And a great question that I tell everybody is, you want to know all of the fees, because so many people will focus on points, but then, they miss the fact that there's an underwriting fee and an application fee and what I call a fee. So You want to know what all of them are. So there's the upfront, right? There's the upfront fees. Then while the project is being done, you have the the interest being paid. So you've got the fees while the loan is outstanding. And then some companies may have some kind of fee at the end, or if it's an equity partnership, then you've got some kind of profit division at the end, right? So you've got your fees up front, in the middle, and at the end. So another thing to be aware of with loans is there a draw fee? So what is a draw fee? So we reimburse for work. This is actually a major mistake that I made in the beginning that burned me, was that I provided money for renovation to people before they did the work. So the money got spent on something else and it wasn't available, and then that's it, it's gone. So the way I suggest that this is done now, and how to do it, is you first have the borrower, first the person does the work, and then it's reimbursed. And it's pretty simple to inspect, whether it's somebody that you personally know, right? A lot of people will partner in their own community and with their own people. So either come out and inspect it physically yourself, or with today's tools between Zoom, FaceTime, all of these tools, have them take a phone and literally walk you around the project, show you what's been completed before you provide the cash, before you reimburse for what's been done. So then, right, so these are the financing options. And then we price according to our loan criteria, right? So we've got, what we can do, right? So far, I looked at the deal. Is it a good deal in its own? Then I overlay onto it what we specifically offer. So we'll have different interest rates based on experience. We've got the points that we charge. So I overlay our financing on top of it, okay? And I verify, is it still a good deal? With the financing put on it, is it still a good deal? A big mistake I see a lot of people making, especially people who, let's say, go to a hard money lender for the first position, and then they're going to somebody private for the second position, the gap, right, the remaining money. What they'll do is they don't account for the money they're going to pay that person. They don't account for that expense. So they're looking at it and they're saying, oh, this is great. All right, so the hard money lender is going to earn his money, and I'm going to be, when I'm done with this project, I'm going to make 30,000, right? And they're borrowing, let's say, whatever, 40, 50, 60,000 from somebody else, not realizing that for that 40, 50, 60,000, they still have to pay something as well. So that needs to be accounted for as well. So that's the story, and then the math of it. Right? So there's the general story of you're buying, you're fixing, you're selling. Then there's the math of, the specific questions of how are you financing it? What's your capital source? What's available to you? And then the numbers that go with it. So you verify that the profit and return on investment are good. And then there's the documents to have. So there's, let's say, a minimum list, and I understand, and I've lent privately and I do this professionally. And I know that there are communities where people do private loans and hard money loans. So we'll talk about the different, at least the minimum necessary docs, and then what can be a potentially full document list. So at the minimum, think of it this way. There are 6 things you're going to need. You're going to need 1 deal analysis. You're going to need 2 insurances. That's property and title. And then you're going to need 3 documents. The promissory note, that's your contract. You're going to need your mortgage. That's the security document, or actually the security document, and it's mortgage or deed depending on state. And then number 3, you're going to need a personal guarantee, because you're lending to the business, or we lend to the business. And then there's still a person behind that business, right? So again, 1 analysis, 2 insurances, property and title, and then 3 pieces of documentation, which is a promissory note, personal guarantee, and the security document being mortgage or deed. Now, a full document list will include things like what we collect for our loans actually will include things like credit and background reports. Now, question is, what do they tell you, right? What would a credit report and a background check tell you? Credit report will tell you the person's financial ability, right? How good are they at managing money? And also what it will tell you is, are they paying their loans? Because I've had people come to me where we run their credit report, credit check. We do a credit check, we get the report, and then we find out that they're not paying their primary mortgage. Well, if they're not paying one loan, what makes me think they're going to pay my loan, right? And you look at it, you look at, are they paying their loans, but they're over leveraged? Well, that's a little bit different, right? And a lot of investors will have that scenario actually, because we use our money. So we're using up our credit lines, we're using our money. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Somebody with 20 deals done, 10 years in the business, and they're using their credit lines, that's okay. A background check, will tell you some interesting things about, for example, felonies. And there are different companies will handle it differently. Some won't do business with someone with a felony on their report at all, okay? Some will look at the felony. Now, there are different kinds. A bar fight and hot-headedness is a different kind of felony from fraud and embezzlement. Okay, it's a very big difference. So you want to know this because it decides whether you want to do business with this person. Now, the next question of documentation to collect, for example, we require an appraisal. We obtain a third-party independent appraisal for the property. We don't accept comps, right? But again, I'm lending nationwide. I don't know necessarily my borrowers. I don't know their areas. So I need a third-person set of eyes to tell me what the value is. Plus, on the other hand, if you're going to use comps from an agent, for example, so as an investor, if you know your area, you know your area, right? But then also, if you're going to use an agent, you have to be sure that they're on the same page with you, that they understand that this is repeat business, and they have to give you the right comps, because sometimes agents don't have the same interest as the investor, right? The agent wants to sell the property, wants to get the property sold, while the investor is looking at it from an investor's perspective of, I need to make a profit on this, right? I need to do this flip. So for this reason, we use a third party, independent appraiser to give us a value. And I'm not knocking agents by any means. And this applies to every single, profession that you deal with, right? You need to make sure that your interests are aligned with them. You have to do the same thing with attorneys. You have to do the same thing with agents, with contractors, right? A contractor that doesn't understand that you're going to be coming back for flip after flip, and they're treating you as a consumer investor who's going to do one project and they're trying to maximize what they earn off of you, is not necessarily in line with you either. So the full list, right, we'll collect docs on the corporation itself, right? I want to see your operating agreement, articles of organization, EIN letter. We want the ID, background credit checks. We want an appraisal. Let's see, I'm forgetting anything. Experience portfolio. So we'll look at a list of projects done, when they were purchased, how much they were purchased for, what they were sold for. And all of this comes together to give us a pricing model. Right? The more experience, the less risk. So that's the list of documents. And then you get to the best practices, right? Why do monthly payments? Why does a lender require, for example, monthly payments? Because profit is abstract, but that monthly fee that the borrower has to pay, it keeps them motivated, it keeps them on the ball to do the project, to get it done. Skin in the game, right? So a lot of lenders will require the borrower to have skin in the game. Why? So that they don't walk away. It ties them to the project so that they don't walk away in case the going gets tough. There's a different reason also. A little bit of room that's left in the purchase price. Let's say we provide for beginners 80% of purchase, or with experienced people up to 90%. That remaining 10 to 20%, what is it for? Well, in case of a really just nasty occurrence, right? The closing gets closed, the property is purchased, the investor walks out into the street, gets hit by a bus. Now we have to take back the property and liquidate it. Well, there's a cost associated with that foreclosure and liquidation process. So that's what that's what that little piece is for. Hopefully we don't ever have to do it, right? Our end game, right, as lenders is to get our money back. We're not interested in the property. We're not in the business of buying properties. We're not in the business of holding properties. We're not in the business of selling properties. We're in the business of lending on them. That's it. And preferably having repeat clients. So there's the best practices, right? Monthly payments, skin in the game, reimburse renovation and draws. And I already told you guys why. To make sure that the work got done and you're reimbursing, as opposed to, because if you advance the money and the person disappears, that money's gone. We discussed, inspection for work, points up front, full boat. So what it's called is when you're charging interest on the entire amount, is a nickname for it is full boat or not full boat interest. And now let's talk about second positions. So first and second positions. When lending, hard money especially, right? Professional lenders will want what's known as first position. First position is that in case anything happens, or if they have to take back the property, they get paid back first when it's liquidated, when that property is sold off. Some people will have what's known as a second position lien. Well, let's say I'm the first position lender. I've provided, and the purchase price was $100,000. I've provided 80, and somebody else is a $20,000 second position lien. Let's say for whatever reason, something happens. I have to take back the property, right? That serial killer bus came by again, and I take back the property. I sell it off. I'm only trying to recoup my 80,000. Now, let's say it goes to auction and it gets sold for 90,000. I get my 80,000. The second position just lost 10,000. They're only getting back whatever remains. So from that perspective, second position is, it's a good thing. If everything goes well, great. There's a lien, they get paid at closing. But if something happens, the second position doesn't actually have any rights to it. So my recommendation is to people that you might want to partner instead of being a second position lien. So you actually become a member of the LLC. Now, you don't have to do any work. You could structure your financial arrangement the same way you would as a loan, but you join them in the LLC even as a minority. Why? Because if anything happens, if the borrower, right, if the investor who's doing the project has anything happen to them, as a partner, even a minority partner, you now have the right to step in and do something. So as an example, I have an arrangement right now where I lent some capital on a project. I made an investment and I actually joined them in the LLC as a 10% member. Specifically in the contract, it says one of the reasons I'm a member is in case of accident and they're not able to continue the project, I have the ability to step in, and the project is actually local to me. So I'm able to step in, continue the project, and I put in language to the fact that I will make them whole. So when I finish the project and they sell it off, I'll be able to, basically, I'll pay them back whatever they've invested also. I'll make them whole, and, so my arrangement is to, is essentially to protect all of us. So if something happens to them, I have the right to step in and finish it out. So, and then at the end is, of course, you decide in your arrangements, are you getting paid interest? Are you getting a piece of the equity when partnering? My suggestion is if you have a partner that money should earn money, and then you participate in the equity split somehow. As an example, if you're participating as the money, not as the person doing the work, you bring in the cash, and let's say you're providing, again, we'll use the example of 100,000. You're providing 80, the person who's doing the project is providing 20. What you guys do is you both earn some interest on your money. Let's say 10%. Both of you are earning 10% on the money that you've put in. And then when the project is done, you also split the net profit, a piece and a piece. So the person doing the project gets, let's say 90%, but the person who put in the money still participates and enjoys a little bit of the upside as well. Okay. So that's, best practices for lending and partnering. So some questions, right, to consider are essentially, what's a fix and flip project? That's you buy, you fix or add value in some way, and you sell it. It's as simple as that. That's the story of it. The project finances are your buying costs, your holding costs, your selling costs. That's it. That's all you need to account, right? You list them out. What are all of your buying costs? What are all of your holding costs? All of your selling costs. Then you account for what your financing options are. Are you financing with cash, a loan, equity partnership, or a mix of them? And then what are your available capital sources, right? Whether it's personal cash, friends, family, acquaintances, or professional lenders and lending companies. You've got your different loan options, right? You've got your interest rate, your points, your fees. You've got your loan to value limitations. And then you've got your terms for the loan. After all of this, you calculate the numbers, you calculate the profit and return on investment. You make sure that it's still a good deal as a cash deal, right? You analyze it as a cash deal. And that's pretty much it. As a lender, as a lender for me, my pricing and what are my rates based on? They're based on credit score, experience, location. That's it. That's what goes in to calculate out what I can offer on a deal, right? So as we said, you've got your cash analysis of your deal, then you look at how you're financing it. If you finance it with hard money, then you can come to Mears Group, and Mears Group has its pricing for this loan, right? That's how I fit into this grand scheme. So in a nutshell, the way that we look at it is we look through the eyes of an investor first. Is it a good deal, right? We put ourselves in the spot of the investor, see if it's a good deal, and then we price according to our loan criteria. What are the options we can offer? We overlay our loan options onto the deal and verify if it's still a good deal. And if it is, fantastic. Our borrowers get an offer and we proceed from there. So what I would suggest is you can visit mearsgroupllc.com for more information. You can also download, we have a free project analyzer that you can download. And of course, come to us if you need a loan.
Thank you, Mark.
So, pleasure.
Appreciate that. That's pretty good evaluation assessment of how deal is getting through your eyes. So I think that helped us a lot. Very important to know that your credit report is very important. I didn't realize that until you told me about it.
I'll tell you another story. You know, depending on, so the way, for example, we'll do it. So we have on a loan, we have somebody who's the guarantor for the loan, right? I'm sure you guys have gone, you know, when you go to get a loan, you can have a co-signer. So I have, same thing with hard money loans, right? You can have somebody who's partnering with you just to be the credit, or somebody who's partnering with you. So for example, I have a deal right now where there are 3 partners in the company. One is there for experience, one is there for credit score to be the guarantor, and one is there for the money. So the 3 of them came together, they've got their arrangement. So I had a deal where I had borrowers who came to me and they said, well, you know, our credit score is kind of beat up. What can we do? And I said, do you have somebody who can be the credit partner in your company? They said, sure. I said, great. We ran credit. Turned out that while this person's credit score was higher, and it was high enough for us, the credit report was showing that they weren't paying their mortgage and another loan. Their credit partner was even worse than them. Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So are you going to be able to answer questions?
Yes, absolutely. That's the next part. So let's have a conversation, guys. You know, I'm sure you've got questions, and I'll be happy to talk about this stuff.
I have a question about your holding time.
Sure.
You the 5,000 a week. How do you derive that? Is that just a ballpark guesstimate, or I mean, where does that come from?
That comes from having conversations with investors and what they've told me that they spend. So Joel and I met at an education company on real estate, and they tell the story that they're budgeting 10,000 per week, right? So that's their budget for renovation when they're working. Listen, 16 years in the business, they're the original, fix and flippers on TV. Like these are the original guys who did it, right? So they've got a system and a machine rocking and rolling. So they're doing 10,000 a week. Well, what's funny is I have another friend of mine in this community, and he and I were having drinks one evening, and we were discussing these numbers. And he says, after 25 years as a framer, he goes, I've never hit 10,000. He's like, we're at about 5. So, I've talked to others, and 5,000 per week seems to be a reasonable number. Roughly. I mean, look, it's all, every investor is individual. Now, when someone comes to me and they tell me, look, I'm doing $80,000 of renovation and I budget it out to be, let's say, 8 months. And they're like, no, listen, this is my 20th project. I'm going to get this baby done in 4 months and sold in 6. I'm not arguing, right? All I'm saying is that one of the lessons I learned was I have to analyze a deal myself. I don't trust anybody else's number. So because of it, I have my own holding time calculation. And it's just from experience, from talking to people, from seeing how long projects take, I put in 5,000 per week.
And you said 3 months from finding the buyer to closing. So that's a $60,000 holding right there.
That's
5,000 a week for 3 months.
No.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. What I'm saying is let's say your budget to do the renovation is, just to make it really simple, your budget is $40,000.
Okay.
Divide $40,000 by 5,000. That's 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? So 8 weeks is roughly 2 months. Right? Add 3 months to that to find a buyer and seller, your holding time is now 5 months.
I see.
That's what the calculation is for.
Okay.
Right. But what's important here is to add that 3 months to find a buyer and sell, because some people miss it.
Right.
Right. I had a woman reach out to me. So first of all, I don't trust contractors on the time they offer. Right. So again, I have a friend of mine who says I have trust issues as a lender. Apparently I do, because I don't trust contractors on their time estimates either. I had a woman reach out to me and she says, we're going to do $90,000 worth of work. And her deal was terrible when I ran it through my calculator with the holding times and everything. And I said, listen, how long are you expecting holding time to be? She said, a month. And I said, okay, but he's got to get the job done. First of all, and he's not doing $80,000 worth of work in a month. It's just not happening. I mean, unless it's gold toilets, right? So that's not happening. And then they said, not to mention, you're going to have to sell it afterwards. Now, just to put it really into perspective, just the purchase was $800,000 plus $80,000 of renovation, right? So you can sense the interest, how fast it's going. So every single month of interest is a huge amount. So I told her, I said, listen, even if your contractor hits the month, which I don't believe he will, I said, you're going to have at least 2 months to close on the property. And I said, at $900,000, I don't think people are showing up with cash and saying, I'm going to drop $1 million to buy this property tomorrow. They're getting a mortgage. And I said, with a mortgage, you've got at least 30 days, but more likely like 45 to 60, right? And she was arguing with me. And I said, look, it's a bad idea, right? No, believe me, he can get it done that fast, whatever. I said, listen, even if I was to bare bone the holding time, you're still at break even. You're not profitable. You're break even at bare bone time. And then if we go to the time that I really think is going to take, and even if I take a reasonable 6 months, you're in the hole. Right. She said, okay, I'm going to, check on my numbers, and never called me back. Nothing I can do. I mean, look, I'm not here, I'm not here to make a bad loan. I'm here to make sure that it's a good project for everybody involved. So yeah, that's the holding time. That's why I have it, and that's how I calculate it.
And if I may share, guys, on the perspective, in and around the experience as a new investor, when you're looking at it, a rule of thumb would be 6 months, just because even if it's a small deal, like as Marcus mentioned, you're going to have 2 or 3 months of sale time involved, and there's going to be the oops factor involved in. and that comes along with it too. So I
There's a
wouldn't really
tangle,
say,
I'm sure.
yeah, yeah.
Oops
I would oops factor, scope creep, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
You know, but I would share that. And the other thing, Mark, you may want to speak about is if it's new construction, some additional time in terms of permitting and some of that.
So
goes along.
well, so on the one hand, I don't provide funding for new construction in and of itself, right? That's not our forte. But at the same time, you're absolutely right. Permitting. So while I don't do new construction, we definitely have heavy builds. We have, we've got people, tearing almost down. Like we had a project where the person left one wall essentially, and then reframed and built everything back up, and basically built a new house. Yes. Permitting is a huge factor that needs to be accounted. So permitting needs to be accounted. You should account oops factors. I had people, when COVID came, right? Whatever our opinions are on it, whatever we think about it, regardless, government agencies shut down.
Yep.
And I had borrowers essentially stuck in this netherworld. They couldn't proceed because they couldn't get permits, inspections to continue with the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. They were stuck, and they're calling me up and they're saying, well, and they called me up and they said, what do we do? Right? We're paying interest. We can't get an inspection and we can't get permits, to get to the next stage. What do we do? So absolutely, there's a lot of variables. And by the way, holding time, this is also where it gets really interesting. The longer the holding time, the more you have to be conscious of the market and what's happening in the world, right? On a quick 4 to 6 month project, all right, you're in, you're out. I mean, I get it. Again, COVID kind of showed us an interesting perspective of what can happen. But practically speaking, right, 4 to 6 months, you're in, you're out. There's not much swing. But when you're doing new construction, when you have to do heavy, builds and permits, now that time starts extending, right? And the closer you're getting to a full year, now you're starting to ride that wave of whatever's happening in the world. So just, be aware of it.
Yeah, it's not a fun way to be on. We've been on it. So.
Hey, Mark, it's that's a good point, because in our subdivision, they're still building. In one of the homes that they set up the frame 3 months ago, and they can't get any workers and inspectors to come in.
Mm-hmm.
They just tear it down last week. Because the frame is getting ruined with the rain, sun, and so there's a big expense for the builder.
Mm-hmm.
Be careful with that one too. Now I have a question for you, Mark. Do you always provide when you see a deal that a new guy came to you and you saw that the analysis is pretty way off? Now, how do you help these guys?
I go through it with them. I will get on the phone with them and I will actually go through their analysis. So first thing I do, so there's two things that happen. One could be just an error in Excel. It happens, right? So what we'll do is we'll open up, my analyzer is obviously my own, is built by me for my purpose, right? Now our numbers should align. There shouldn't be a difference, but my analyzer is mine. And by now it's been run on, hundreds upon hundreds of deals. So I trust my analyzer. So when I plug in the numbers and I see the profit is either break even or negative, I'll reach out to the borrower and I'll say, okay, let's run through. Like, first of all, what did your analyzer show you, right? Because it could be it could be a mistake, or they're going to tell me that they missed something. Either, so again, there's either a difference in Excel, something happened in a cell, or they're not aware, or something is different in the story of their project, right? As I mentioned before, first there's the story, and then there are the numbers. So we need to find out where the issue is. It could be just a glitch in Excel. I had somebody reach out to me, and when I got back to them and they said, hey, what's your analyzer saying? And they said, oh my God, when I filled out your deal form, I by accident, put a decimal spot in the wrong spot, right? It's not 3,000, it's not, 30,000 of renovation, it's 3 or whatever it was. Then we actually will go through and compare what they're expecting. And that's why I said, right, holding time. I have a different calculation for holding time than somebody else will. They're looking at it saying, oh no, we'll get this done in 4 months. I doubt it, right? So we'll compare and we'll discuss how much are you spending versus how fast you expect to do it. And by the way, I have a client who's a builder, who's been a builder for 20 years. Okay. When he's telling me he's going to do a project and, he's going to get a project for $80,000 done in 3 months, I know he's going to get it done in 3 months. I have no doubt about it. He's still going to have to sell it afterwards, but his timing is a little bit different than a beginner who's never done a project, right? So we compare time. Another one is I had a client who reached out, same thing. I looked at the deal analyzer and I said, what are you doing, right? Like, what are you paying for commissions to a realtor? And it turned out, so realtor commissions, let's look at this. Typical realtor commission is 6%, right? And they're going to get split 3% and 3%. First of all, as numbers go up, as the value goes up, you start having more and more room to negotiate that number down. Okay. As an example, again, out of my own life, when we were selling our house in Brooklyn and moving out to Rockland County, right, we sold our house for $1 million. At that point, the commission was 3%. Okay, so at that point, because that 3% was such a huge number in and of itself. So I reached out to this client and I said, listen, what are you paying? And he said, well, we signed up for this realtor service and they're out in Georgia. And he said, we signed up for this realtor service. So every time our realtor fees are 3.25%. That's all we pay. Well, of course, 3.25% versus 6, that's almost 3% in his analysis. That's swaying his profit. That's his unique scenario, right? Remember, common, unique, numbers, right? Do the math. So that was his unique scenario. So I will go through and I will compare notes. I will say, okay, what did you put in for this? What did you put in for this? Are you using, different states, different laws? For example, I'm in an attorney state, so I need to use an attorney for purchase and sale of real estate. In some states, you can use title. That's a different cost, right? So are you using an attorney? That's another fee. Are you doing an inspection of the property yourself in addition to an appraisal? Or are you just trusting your contractor? That's a fee, right? So all of these fees. When you're selling the property, are you going to offer them a $500 warranty on the house for a year, or are you not? That's another fee, right? Are you staging the property, or are you not? By the way, yes, you should stage. That's just a separate story, but right, but that's another fee, right? So when you look at all of this stuff, right, my analyzer kind of puts all of this together, and I have a number. So when my numbers are drastically off from the borrower, we compare.
Mhm.
Okay.
And either they're going to say, you're right, I didn't think of something, or they're going to tell me something where, okay, I'll adjust to your numbers. And, obviously, if we're off by 20,000, we're having a conversation. If we're off after we're done comparing numbers, and if we're off by a couple of $100, it's not a question anymore. So, what else?
Separate on as far as if the borrower needs proof of funding, do you offer that, and how the turnaround time?
Turnaround time is about 24 to 48 hours. What we offer is, so on our website, there's a deal form to fill out, whether it's for fix and flip or buy and hold. And when the person fills out the form, that's the minimum information we need. Now, obviously, it's information in, information out, but based on that information, we'll run an analysis, and then we will provide 2 pieces of information. We'll provide a letter of interest, which actually has the expected terms, and we provide a deal summary, okay? The letter of interest is what they can provide as the proof of funds. Call it a pre-approval, call it whatever you want to call it. But essentially, that's me saying, yes, I'll provide funding for this deal, provided that I can get an appraisal, right? Whatever, we're going to run title, things like that. But that letter of interest is what they provide as their proof of funds. And the deal summary is for them to just have an idea of what the project numbers are going to be.
Here's a question for you, Mark, and I'm not sure the experience level of the other guys, but maybe why don't you talk to them about how you perceive an investor sending you what's called maybe a private lender packet or introductory packet versus not having it. You disregard it?
Yeah. So I'll explain the answer. It's not to be like dismissive of it. It is useful. It's just, so this is kind of the difference between there are professionals who look at them. It's just, this is the difference between a company with its own systems versus, let's say, a private lender, is a good way to compare it. I disregard it because what is a private lender packet? What does it have, right? Typically, it will have information such as the property address, the comps that they ran. It will have the purchase, rehab, ARV numbers, okay? So yes, it has enough information to look at the numbers of the deal. The information it's missing for me is it's missing the credit score usually, and it's missing experience, which are two of the factors that I need. Right. So additionally, while the comps are good to support the ARV they're giving me, I'm still going to do an appraisal. So because of it, I don't need the comps, right? That's why the comps aren't as important to me. So they're good to support it, but then I just want you to tell me the ARV. I don't need the comps to support it. Just tell me the number. Okay. So because of it, it's good and it's bad. It doesn't work on its own because I still need a credit score and I need experience. But it's good because it has most of the information, and sometimes I can glance at it and just kind of get an idea. But I personally don't need it. So I literally need just the information in the deal forms that I'm collecting. So it makes it a little easier, right? People don't need to put them together. They don't need to, that's also the difference with me. I don't need anybody to impress me. Again, I don't need the story. I just need the numbers. Okay. It's all numbers. There's an address to the property. There's a cost that you're buying it for, you're renovating it for, you're selling it for. There's your experience, your credit score. That's it. And based on that information, I can make my initial judgments. And then afterwards, I'm still going to do the due diligence that shows me what I need to see about the borrower, the property, right, and the scenario, right? So I'm still going to do a credit and background check. So because of it, I don't need to know about your education or who you are as much, right? Your comps for the property are good, but I don't really need them because I'm going to do an actual appraisal. So the comps are going to be there and I'm going to have a professional come out and evaluate it. So I don't need them. But if you're going to go and borrow from private individuals, then absolutely. Right? You're presenting them the information they need to see in order to be able to make a judgment of should they or should they not get involved in an investment. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, again, because from that perspective, particularly if you have experience, you can show a portfolio of projects and, all of the jobs that have been completed. Yeah. So it tells a story. Yep. And obviously they're still going to do their own due diligence also. Yeah. But it as you mentioned, there is a certain population that there is a benefit.
Absolutely. Now, experience portfolio, by the way, I collect it. It's just my experience portfolio. I don't need photos of the property. Okay. I mean, I personally like to look at them just because they're cool. But practically speaking, all I need is the address, because I'll look into public records to confirm who it was purchased by, when it was purchased, what it was sold for, right? So I can look at those public records and confirm it. So for me, a portfolio, an experience portfolio is essentially an Excel spreadsheet of what, of what got done or what is owned.
So Mark, what do you see with going into 2021 in terms of any lending changes or opportunities that's any different today?
I have no idea. I can tell you because I can tell you looking back at 2020 what happened, and I have, it's not playing out the way I would have expected, and I have no way of looking into the future. Like I don't know. So let's just, in 2020, everything ground to a halt. I mean, it's something I never thought I would see happen. Hard money stopped. Essentially, 80% of money available for this stuff just stopped.
Overnight.
Overnight. We're talking big funds down to little guys like me. Everybody just went, we're done. It didn't matter if you were literally supposed to be closing today. It stopped. Money just stopped. And everybody said, we don't, like, what's going on? So it stopped. Then over the next few weeks, what happened was some decided to make a very quick play for clientele. So they said, we're lending, but we've changed our criteria. But then practically speaking, they weren't lending because their criteria got so tight that they weren't really making a loan. But what they were doing is collecting data, collecting client information, right? So everybody that was applying, coming to them for a loan, they've got their emails now, addresses, right? So they were collecting data that way. That's what happened. Then little by little, loans started being made again. People were kind of feeling it out. All right, so let's do this, let's do that. LTVs got really tight. So for example, right now for a beginner, we'll go up to 70% of ARV as a limit. At the same time, you know, for experience, like 3 and up experience, we'll do 75% of ARV. To put it into perspective, when we started lending beginning of 2020, we were down at about 55, 60%. Only about half of what the project needed. So we, you know, and it started little by little opening up from there. But then what happened was the throttle got opened up to more than it was even before.
Yep.
So now with a credit score, so what's interesting is I didn't have this before, but now with credit scores, the better the credit score will actually push up. So even somebody with 0 experience, but an excellent credit score, we can go up to 85% of purchase, and we can go up to 75% of ARV because they've, you know, again, what does a credit score show? It's a snapshot of the person's ability to manage money. That's what a credit score is, okay? And then the credit report just, you know, verifies it. So, now with better credit scores, we're pushing, higher LTVs than we were doing even before. So for that reason, I have no idea, right? So in this environment, we're actually more aggressive. We're getting more business and you know, we're churning loans. What's going to happen in 2021? I don't know. And the biggest question I have, and I don't have an answer for this, and it affects me actually personally because I own properties, is what's going to happen with rentals.
There you go.
I have tenants who haven't paid in months.
Yeah.
So it's not, you know, it's an interesting scenario. So, and what's also interesting is, okay, so I have tenants who didn't pay for months. What's funny is, while everybody keeps talking about help to everybody and everybody else, no one has stopped property taxes.
Right.
So you've got government saying you can't evict. You don't necessarily, right? If you have hardship, you don't have to pay, but we're still charging. So the landlords are stuck in between going, okay, I can't collect money, but I'm bleeding it out on the other side, right? And this is factual. This isn't like, you know, this isn't politics. This is simply what's really happening. No state, no city has turned around and said, we're going to stop property taxes. No insurance company has said, we're not going to charge you insurance, right? So because of it, now in my case, I've always run fiscally conservative, right? Like very tight numbers. So a lot of reserves. So because of it, I'm still okay, right? I'm able to handle this. But there are a lot of owners who were very over leveraged. So now they're not collecting rent. They're bleeding out mortgages and
Insurance.
And all of, and, you know, property taxes. So now they're coming up on next year. Now, here's the reality of it. If somebody hasn't paid since March, they're not going to pay.
Right.
Let's be practical. Nobody's going to drop, you know, almost a year's worth of rent and be like, sorry. No. And realistically speaking, okay, so you're going to, you know, evict them. Okay, you're going to go to small claims court up to 5,000. Okay, you can try to garnish wages. That's all meaningless, right? So what's going to happen next year is a big unknown. What happens with these evictions? What happens with these owners who are unable to hold on to their properties? And what happens right after that is the unknown. I don't know. I don't know. Because from that perspective, it could be opportunity for people to buy up properties, and at the same time, I don't know. I don't know how it all is going to play out. So I wish I could tell you. As of right now, the one thing that I can tell you is that people are seriously migrating. Okay. New York City, at last I heard, had lost 1 million residents. Okay, just put that into numbers, right? 1 million people went, we're out.
Yeah.
Okay?
Wow.
Where did they go? Right. Where did they go? A lot of them went to Florida. A lot of them went to New Jersey and Rockland County. They basically shifted to out here, right? New Jersey, and that's why Rockland County, New Jersey, the counties next to New York, they've all seen, even as far, Connecticut, into Connecticut, Stamford, Bridgeport, all of these areas, they're seeing a huge bump in housing sales because people, as they're leaving New York, are buying in these areas, right? They're moving up to where I am, Orange County here in New York. So because of it, you've got a huge churn of real estate.
Mhm.
And what's happening is people are realizing that I don't have to work in an office. I can work elsewhere. I can
That's
work
right.
remote.
That's
Well, if I
right.
can work remote, why do I need to stay in a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan if I can have my, for the price of that condo or co-op in Manhattan, I can have an acre with a 5,000 square foot house and my kids can have a backyard.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, and I don't think it's going to change. I think that's going to, if anything, pick up steam into next year.
I agree with that.
So from that perspective, real estate will keep on going. So somewhere, right? So I don't know, somewhere between people moving and buying houses, and you need renovations for them. So that's the boost up. And on the other hand, the evictions and however the rental market will play out, there's the other side. I just don't know.
Fair answer.
I know, that's a great answer. A lot of information that led to nothing.
Yeah, well, you couldn't really say anything else but that. I mean, unless we have a little crystal ball we don't know about.
But I think people will definitely keep on moving. There's crazy stories you hear. And I have friends, looking to move because they got stuck. And at the same time, you hear crazy stories. My brother-in-law's coworker, for example, I heard the story. Family with 3 kids, 2 dogs in a 1-bedroom apartment, and in Manhattan. Yeah, you spend a couple of months in that apartment, you're looking to move.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, well, that's a lot. Even in Texas, we have a lot of people moving to Texas. And one thing, though, there's still a lot of construction here in Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Any more questions, guys?
Yeah, keep them going. I'll be here as long as you guys want me to be here. So keep on coming. Keep them coming.
Mark, do you guys do any transactional funding?
So yes and no. There's no limit on how long or how short you have to keep my loan. So I'll do it, basically we can do the loan, close on it, and essentially close, you can, sell the property the next day and pay us back. So it's kind of it will be the same process. I'm going to do an appraisal. I'm going to run title. We'll close. And then on the other side, you could sell it immediately. So for example, for double close, it will work.
Okay. So timing wise on there, oftentimes that's kind of one of the biggest hangups. And
yeah,
if you come across a deal like tomorrow and, competition says it's got to close in 10 days, it's probably not going to fit. Yeah. So
and I'm okay with that. I mean, there are people out there or companies who specialize in it. It's just not our,
no, I get it.
take. It's okay.
Okay, so we've been an hour and 15 minutes. So I think Mark, you have given us a lot of information, great information that we can start thinking about and that way. And hopefully, Rick can put you on another list for money lenders.
Sure. Be happy to help.
So if there are no other questions, I appreciate the time, taking the time to listen to this. Hopefully, we can. This is the start, and I'm looking at hosting more webinars, and hopefully we can help, especially those new folks who are in real estate investment to really hear what's the practical way and what's really going out there. It's nice to see the numbers in paper, but to actually see and hear from experienced people makes a big difference. So
Sure.
appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. And, you're welcome to, all of you guys are welcome to reach out if you have students or followers. I know, Jeff, you've got a Facebook page for beginners and how to get off the ground in real estate. So by all means, reach out, have them reach out to me, and we'll be happy to help them.
Same here.
And I don't mean just with loans, but in general, right? This is a subject that needs to be understood, right? How financing for a project works.
Right.
So be happy to help.
All right. Well, you guys have a good evening, and we'll see you later. Good
All right,
night.
thank you, Joel. Mark, good to
Pleasure.
see you, man.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Likewise.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
Take care.